Ace is the place with the helpful hardware, folks.
Don't miss the annual Outdoor Power Sale at Ace, our biggest outdoor power sale of the season. Save big on mowers, blowers, trimmers, chainsaws, and more from the best brands like Craftsman and Toro, all under one roof. And as always, the help is free. Hurry into your local Ace now for huge savings during our biggest outdoor power sale of the year. Offers valid on select products through April 17th at participating stores. Includes instant savings offers for Ace Rewards members. See store for details.
Sports Professor Rick Horrow, welcome to Beyond the Scoreboard, this serious show that doesn't take itself too seriously, but $1 trillion sports business. Everybody in New England certainly knows what the epicenter of the sports business is this weekend, and probably all over the world it is Super Bowl 51. We're here in Houston with everybody else as the Patriots take on the Atlanta Falcons. We have a very interesting show lined up. All you need to know about Super Bowl tickets, allocations, hospitality, new media, commercials, even the thought of a Super Bowl holiday. We all take it off anyway, so we might as well make it official. Bottom line is, on This Week and Beyond the Scoreboard, we also have Ross Greenberg, America's storyteller, one of the most innovative producers and best storytellers in television history. He's done numerous documentaries and 21 Cable Ace Awards, 54 Sports Emmys. You know he's done stuff regarding pro football, but also boxing, basketball, baseball, the documentarian of the modern era, talking about football documentaries and otherwise. And obviously also our big issues to watch. Super Bowl Sunday, got a lot to cover. Rick Horrow, Beyond the Scoreboard. Beyond the Scoreboard, subscribe to our iTunes feed. Look for us on Stitcher, Google Play, Audio Boom, and the like. Here at Super Bowl 51, there is a frenzy like none other. You'd expect the Patriots fans, who are here, I think probably twice as many at Media Row and otherwise, than the Falcons fans, even though this is a relatively new experience to the Atlanta Falcons, having been in Super Bowl in South Florida and basically going 0 for 1. Now they meet the Patriots, and now they get caught up in the 2 weeks of hype and the $500 million of economic impact. Ross Greenberg created Ross Greenberg Productions after a 33-year career at HBO. VP and executive producer of HBO Sports from 85 to 90. Senior vice president, executive producer from 90 to 2000. 2000 to 2011. President. Went out on his own, and guess what? He's done 3 documentaries for NBC Sports Network and the Golf Channel. 1962 U.S. Open, Jack's first major, Cold War on ice, War on the shore, golf, hockey, otherwise. He's also done football, Forgotten Four, the integration of pro football, and Dwight Howard in the moment, Dean Smith running for his life, Lawrence Phillips story. He's won more than 100 major television sports awards, 8 Peabodys, 54 Sports Emmys, 12 Cine Golden Eagles, 5 Monitor Awards. Too many awards to mention. We'll only mention a few. Bottom line is, when you want to know about media and television, especially with 115 million viewers tuning in to watch the game, more expected. But yet, what about streaming? What about internet? How do we deal with television and new media? And what does that mean for the future of commercials, commercial TV, and the like? Well, Ross Greenberg has the answers.
On the scoreboard, keeping score in the boardroom, it's not too many times that we have actually satisfied this search. I've asked my people to line up a definitive interview with someone who's won more than 100 major television sports awards, 54 Emmys, 12 Golden Eagles, 5 Monitor Awards, 21 Cable Ace Awards, and I said anything less than that, we don't have a show. So luckily we found Ross Greenberg just in time. How's that for an intro?
I like that. I like that. Some of those awards, I don't even know what they are, just so you know.
Well, no, yes, of course you do. But the bottom line is you may not, but the people that follow your career and understand how diversified it is do. And I would also introduce you as America's new next definitive storyteller. There have been some in the past, but would you accept that moniker for purposes of this interview?
I love that moniker. I mean, that's something that, I've worked long and hard to try to foster, and I think over the years we brought some pretty compelling stories to people in a lot of different ways, mostly through sports. So it's been a fun journey, I'll tell you that.
Well, but it's also a journey that requires unique creativity, from Cold War on Ice to the stuff you're doing right now with the Road to the NHL Outdoor Classics, the episodes that begin with a number and end with the development of these, Joe DiMaggio, Sonny Liston, Larry Bird, the struggle of women in sports. I'm not going to sit here reading and you reacting, but give me your kind of breakthrough time in your life where you said, hey, this is cool.
Well, we developed a style in 1990 when I did When It Was a Game, which was a look back at the early years of Major League Baseball from the 30s through the 50s. And the idea there was to kind of take old home movie footage that was in people's attics and basements and to bring them to life and to explain what it was like to play ball when it was a game. But what it did was it set up what became my style of documentary filmmaking, and so I was able to kind of look into the future and kind of see what I wanted to do. Instead of just throwing kind of interviews against the wall with highlights, which many people in sports had done over the years in documentary form, I developed a style that I've kind of stuck to ever since. So that was groundbreaking. But then there have been momentous ones, whether it was Magic and Bird, as you mentioned, or the 80 hockey team, which I then turned into the movie Miracle. There's been some real super highlights in developing these stories. But it's all about putting together the best team available, the best shooters, best editors, best producers, best directors, and best everything, and just bringing it to life, executing on the plan, looking at the vision of what the story is you're trying to tell, beginning, middle, and end, making people's heartstrings kind of go through the story with you, and just pulling on people's emotions, and that's what I guess I have a knack for doing.
Well, thank you for deflecting a lot of this to other members of your team, and that is important, but obviously it starts with you as far as identifying early with a keen eye the stories that may resonate if done right. So with all of the mega 1980s Miracle on Ice and the other incredible stories that you focus on, you also have stories like Running for His Life, the Lawrence Phillips story. Mm-hmm. I'm a Dolphin person. I know Lawrence Phillips and I know Nebraska, et cetera. But what are the first things you look at when you look at a kind of a raw story and say, hey, this may work?
Well, that one, I've been following him for 20 years. I don't really know why, but his life, I always ask the question, why? Why was the 80 hockey team special? Why did the women soccer team in 1999 grab the attention of the world when no women's sports team ever had? Because there was a women's movement going on. Now, with Lawrence Phillips, I had always wondered why a player of that magnitude with that kind of skill set would throw his life away with what seemingly were bizarre and, ridiculous domestic violence incidents through the years. And so then, as time went on, and I continued to pick up the paper and, along with the American public, read story after story of multi-million-dollar athletes throwing their life away because they decided to hit their spouse or do something ridiculous at home, I said to myself, well, why is this happening, and why would they throw it away? And so I looked at Lawrence Phillips' life, and in January of last year when he lost his life, and I said, you know what, let's dive into this one. This story has to be kind of the definitive expose on what's wrong with American society and why we can't fix these demons that these kids have as they grow up and mature into professional athletes or whatever, and seemingly they just throw their life away. So next time we pick up a paper and read about a Josh Brown or anyone, we kind of take a look and say, okay, what's the story, instead of just thinking it's another thug who's decided to do something stupid.
It's a forerunner of things to come, because if you defined your universe as athletes doing something stupid, you'd have a very large universe to deal with, obviously. So
I know. And there are a lot of issues, but I think if we continue to ask why, maybe we can fix some things, and we can make sure that there are no future Lawrence Phillips. That would be the godsend.
And I guess that's my kind of question on this. Is your primary goal to entertain? Is your primary goal to change the world one episode at a time? Well, what is it?
Both. I think if you do that, if you look for the unique stories, some of them are just reflective, where you can kind of imagine where you were when, and I rekindle those feelings that you had, and in that instance, there's nothing better than just reliving the past and remembering a moment that you'll cherish, or educating kids that didn't live through it as to why that moment was significant in sports history. But every now and then you can come upon a story that can really be meaningful in changing people's perspective. The Dare to Dream documentary that I spoke of was about Mia Hamm, Julie Foudy, and that group, Brandi Chastain, who really were in the middle of a women's revolution in the 90s to try to gain respect on the fields of play. And lo and behold, here we are in 2016, and they're still fighting for that respect in a lawsuit with, the United States Soccer Federation. So, some of these struggles continue, and I think it's important to document them.
I think probably you will have moved the needle on most of these stories, but they'll the core issues surrounding them may continue through the end of time. You can.
Oh my God, yeah. Right? I mean,
even
it's just
longer.
It's part of who we are, and sports is always a microcosm of what's going on in the country, and people shouldn't forget that. I like to take sports seriously. Obviously, there's some comical pieces that have been done. We did the reverse of the Curse of the Bambino after we did the Curse of the Bambino. So, it fluctuates, but for the most part, it's serious business, and these stories are important entertainment. And I think that sports has always been given a back seat and never been taken seriously as an entertainment vehicle in this country.
And let me ask you this before we get into a couple of substantive things, including the various sports documentaries you're doing. So the Epix platform gives you the ability to deal with the road to the NHL Outdoor Classics, the 4 episodes heading into All-Star Week and beyond. And everybody now wants to tell stories, because between the podcasts and the vertical integration and nobody knowing what devices to watch, you watch the small devices or the big devices. Is it, in your mind, a better world for the definitive storyteller because people more accept the idea of long form on varieties of platforms, or is it worse because everybody's trying to do it and clutters the market?
Well, I think the most important thing is not think about the platform as much as just getting the ability to kind of go inside, and that's what the Outdoor Classics Road to is all about, to bring the viewer inside, bring the curtain up, allow them into the trainer's room, into the locker rooms, between periods, before games, after games, so that when a Zetterberg, lashes out at his teammates as the captain in what is a closed-door meeting, we were there last week, which was pretty gripping television, and just allowing people to understand what these players go through when they have the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat, as a team, and what the coaches have to do to pick up their players, and what the teams have to do individually, to get the best out of their players. So, that's really what this behind the scenes is all about. Now, whether it's being watched on an iPhone or a tablet or, listened to on a podcast, all of that is kind of window dressing and is encouraging that Epix would take the opportunity under Mark Greenberg and Ross Bernard to kind of look for different ways of distribution so that, it can have as wide an audience as possible on whatever format everyone wants to watch. So that's really important in this day and age in television, if you want to get maximum exposure. And how the ratings, across the board are taking hits because of the variety of product out there.
Well, and that's really my next question from a business-oriented perspective and the audiences for Reuters and NBC a little bit. And Mark Lazarus is leading the way on this, which is let's figure out a new way to measure. Right after the Olympics, we'll create some kind of a metric where all eyeballs ought to be measured, not what they're watching. And it's cutting across, in my mind, all aspects of content, because it's great that Epix is agreeing to do what you're doing. Your stuff is seminal, but if it can be defined as everybody's watching because here's the way we're measuring it, I assume it's better for advertising and it's better for content down the road. How do we get there?
Yeah, and I think that Mark Lazarus is on to something, and I think, the viewer is going to take us there. So as the viewer kind of expands on where he or she wants to watch, then Nielsen just can't pay attention to the premier rating of a show coming on a television network anymore. And that's clear. I mean, now you're seeing Nielsen having to go to their ratings and take into account the DVR use of up to 7 days after a show. And I know in dealing with these networks now, Epix is closely monitoring how many hits they're getting online, as people tune in to watch off of epixhd.com. So, it's happening. It's happening before our eyes. And I think the networks are all looking at the numbers in a very specific way now and not paying attention to, a lot of the standardized rating systems that have been around since I was, breaking into the business in 1978. I mean, those days are long gone.
They're long gone and will continue to be long gone, and hopefully the industry and the ad executives will understand they're long gone too. And one of the differences that I'd like you to comment on is that theoretically we 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we now hold up live sporting events as quote-unquote the ultimate reality TV because everybody's going to watch it, and then if they don't watch it, they're not going to watch the rerun. That's great. But now with storytelling and the evergreen access to it and the fact that the measurement is just as good a week later or 2 weeks later, it makes the documentarian and the telling of stories even more compelling. Agree?
Yeah, I mean, I had an epiphany, Rick, the other week. To be honest with you, I have a feeling, and I just saw the first semblance of it in a note yesterday, that Fox is going to come out and produce a women's basketball game behind the scenes. And, I kind of did that starting in 1978 when I got to HBO when it came to boxing, where we had cameras in, the locker rooms before the fight, and we were miking refs and we were miking the trainers in the corners and going to the corners and listening in. But I think there's now a day and a time coming in the not-too-distant future where cameras are going to be going into locker rooms. They're going to be on the sidelines. We're going to have mics on players during games, live games. And, I've teased everyone with these shows that I've done since 2000, since we, initiated Hard Knocks, Steve Sable and I. But, the fact is that through all the 24/7s and now the all-access shows I do on Showtime and now Road to, on Epix, we're really kind of setting the tone for the future of television. And people will say to me, well, what about language? And you know what? I have a feeling that over time, language isn't going to be an issue, that people want the raw reality of sports and what's going on on the field of play and in those locker rooms. And, these leagues are all going to have to wake up because, the ratings will continue to slide because I think it's more and more expected that viewers will be taken where they haven't been before.
Hey, pal, we have the raw reality of politics now. We must have the raw reality of sports. I mean, why not? It's, wake up and smell the coffee. I also think
that we're going to start a groundswell as well with my legal training. We need to bestow the trademark of all access broadly defined on Ross Greenberg, so any behind-the-scenes issues ever have to go through you for clearance. Do you like that?
I love that. But you know what? It's all about trust. The teams, the leagues, everybody's got to just trust that we're not going to get in the way, and we're going to just be fair and at the end of the day not embarrass anyone on television. So, and they'll have the last say always in that. So, it's not just up to me, though. There's a lot of good trained executives out there that can handle it.
Well, two more questions. One is the journalistic standards for the understanding before you go into it. The language aside, but the content, and obviously if we get into censorship and league ground rules, they're not going to go too far with it. But this is not like a beat writer agreeing in the old Babe Ruth days to keep things quiet. This is reality, and in order to really get what you need to get, people need unfettered access, not just access. How do you reconcile?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the teams can shut the door. I mean, if there's a team meeting where they're giving away the secret sauce, they're not going to let us in, and they haven't let us in. And, you know, there are going to be some things that step over the line that can't go on television. You know, and some of those would affect the image of the team, the image of the player, and the image of the league. So I'm not naive to think that, you know, I'm Bob Woodward or something, and I have to find out who, you know, robbed the Democratic National Committee in Watergate Hotel. So, I mean, this isn't like investigative journalism. I mean, a lot of what I do is, Lawrence Phillips was, but in this particular case, when we go all access with teams and leagues, you know, it's hard to become kind of an investigative journalist because you're not going to get let in. They'll just simply, you know, shut you out in the middle of your show. So that doesn't do anyone any good. So we're accepting. Sometimes we'll push the envelope and hope that we can get something in that the team might take out. We have Steve Ott on tonight's show, you know, railing on the ice, dropping quite a few F-bombs, pretty angry in a fun kind of way. And frankly, you know, I was happy that the Detroit Red Wings decided to leave it in. So there's some times where you'll be surprised.
Well, and it requires some vision. We all know the commissioner very well, and while you don't want to hear all that stuff, but he also understands authentication and what it all means. So, you know, kudos to him for this vision and, you know, putting you in charge of it. Final question for my Chicago and Boston viewers and listeners. You did write in Boston. You defined Curse the Bambino. Then you came back and you realized that, all right, let's get it done. So when is the wait till next year saga Chicago Cubs
I know.
over?
I was thinking about that. Now, you have to remember that I happen to have been at HBO when I did Curse of the Bambino and Reverse of the Curse, and then when I did Wait Till Next Year on the Chicago Cubs, but I am no longer there. So I think you need to call Rick Bernstein, good friend, executive producer, senior VP at HBO Sports, and tell him that he's got to change the last 10 minutes of that show. I can also get in touch with them and demand it as well. But they deserve that in Chicago now.
Let's do it together. So all of a sudden, I'm now your, you know, father confessor and your agent at the same time. Well, congratulations. That it couldn't happen to a better guy, Ross Greenberg, the king of modern storytelling.
So Ross Greenberg gives us a very interesting perspective on what it's like to be involved in televising a lot of these games. Obviously, there's some perspective on the Super Bowl that I'm taking away while I'm here. First of all, the commercials, $5 million. We've heard about that before, but that's what it takes if you want to air one. Threshold's been topped only a few times over the past few years on select networks, but never been set as the bare minimum for the Super Bowl by any network. CBS between $4.5 and $4.7 million in 2005, and $5 million for Super Bowl 50. Now we're above 5. Guess what? When the Super Bowl started, simultaneously streamed on 2 networks, cost of a Super Bowl ad, $42,000. It's a great country. By the way, team valuations. Last year, the Panthers and Broncos were at the top and the bottom, and this year, if the Patriots and the Falcons were played in the boardroom and not on the field, Patriots hands down. Forbes 2016 talks about a $3.4 billion valuation for the Patriots, number 2 in the league, trailing only the Cowboys. Patriot Place, Gillette Stadium, the Kraft legacy, first class, winning 9 million Super Bowls. You get it. On the other hand, the Falcons, 19th most valuable team at only $2.125 billion. Only $2 billion. The Mercedes-Benz Stadium that opens in September will add to that value, and Arthur Blank certainly is generous. He will take more than 500 employees to the Super Bowl game this weekend on his cost to express some appreciation for the second time the Falcons ever go. Big deal, very important. What about tickets? Everybody wants tickets, and few people can get them. StubHub, with 47 countries around the world they represent, they certainly know what they're talking about, but they're telling us that the tickets are about $4,600 on average, down about 11% from this time last year. You can explain it. Super Bowl 50, beautiful weather, Peyton Manning's last football game, the Bay Area corporations, and Super Bowl 50 itself. But yet, this year, little less total sales, but it's more international. 10% coming from purchasers outside the U.S. Australia, Hong Kong, Brazil, Israel, South Africa. 7% from the Canada and Mexico requests alone. Super Bowl is an international bucket list phenomenon, by the way. It doesn't matter who you are or where you are. The NFL worked hard to grow the game across the globe to create the hype that is the Super Bowl. 47 countries, as I said, StubHub is involved in, and they certainly know what they're doing. It's an international perspective. Ticket allocation, 1,500 each earmarked for the Patriots and Falcons officially from the 9,000 tickets that On Location Experiences gets as the official deal with the NFL. Half the league's teams handed the players their tickets. Another story, the players, by the way, each active NFL player gets 2 Super Bowl tickets. Some sell, some keep, all see it as a very valuable bargain for issue, and some are handed out directly by the teams, and some the players have to go pick them up themselves. No matter what, the bottom line is tickets continue around here to be a big, big deal. How about hospitality? Houston pulling out all the stops to ensure a successful Super Bowl weekend. The city been the hub of major sporting events over the past few years. The venue, NRG Stadium, hosted last year's epic Final Four final. According to the Houston Chronicle, the city boasts warm weather, we know that, 20,000 reserved hotel rooms, 72,000-seat stadium, and a 9-day fan festival. And less than a week out from the Super Bowl, forecast for game day, now I'm a weatherman. High of 73, partly cloudy. Pretty darn good. Warm weather Super Bowl sites, always a boon for golf-related hospitality. The Super Bowl committee in Houston has an annual invitation-only event at the NFL Foundation's star-studded Legends on the Link. This year, Friday, at the Golf Club of Houston, the home course to the PGA Tour's Shell Houston Open, and perhaps an unusual sense of urgency around Super Bowl-related golf events this week. Why? Minneapolis next year pretty much rules out any golf, and a quick search of the Top Golf website doesn't reveal any coming soon locations of the popular driving range chain in Minneapolis, St. Paul soon. So Houston is probably it if you want to play golf. The economic impact, all in all, about $500 million, $350 million of economic impact in Glendale, 720 in Houston, a lot in San Francisco, the Bay Area. A lot of different issues, but downtown Houston, the Galleria and Reliant Park, which all are in Houston proper and Harris County, are the epicenter of the game, as opposed to the bottom line of San Francisco, Santa Clara, Oakland, Alameda, all of those cities. A lot of other cities spread it out over the regions, and Houston does not. Hence, economic impact closer to the center of the universe. How about future games? Well, again, Atlanta Falcons have a $1.5 billion stadium opening next year, helped by them and also getting there. 75% PSL sales marker already done. They started this year with an inventory about 35,000 or more to sell, and now they've obviously got the deal going. Maybe it takes going to a Super Bowl to get it done. future games. Owners continue to reinvest in stadiums, all trying to one-up the most recent state-of-the-art facility that opens up. New stadium means increased likelihood of drawing mega events, such as the Super Bowl and the Final Four. Last year, the Vikings played their first game at U.S. Bank Stadium, set to host next year's Super Bowl. Down in Miami, Steve Ross and the Dolphins completed their facelift of Hard Rock. And across the country and in L.A., the new City of Champions Stadium being planned to host both the Chargers and Rams. And despite the ongoing scrutiny, public money being spent on those massive facility projects, because with a new stadium comes more positive economic impact for the surrounding area. And in Houston's case, the economic impact of Super Bowl 51 expected to completely offset the public cost of building it, about $500 million. That's my take, and I'm sticking to it. A lot going on here in Super Bowl Media Row. NFL honors, Super Bowl game, tailgate, maybe a game for the ages, maybe a blowout. I'm not giving a prediction, clearly. The prediction is the Super Bowl will pass viewership records and economic impact records as Bill Belichick likes to say, the game goes on to Minnesota. That's our show for the day. I'd like to thank Ross Greenberg. I'd like to thank you for listening. Again, if you're interested, subscribe to our iTunes feed. Look for us on Stitcher, Google Play, Audio Boom, the NBC family of networks, and look at the full 10 to watch list on csnne.com. I'm Rick Horrow, the sports professor, and won't you join us next week when we go Beyond the Scoreboard.
Wingstop lives flavor, and you crave it. That's why we've created the Boneless Flavor Fix for you and your crew. 20 boneless wings, 4 flavors, 2 fries, 2 dips, and 2 cold drinks for just $20. Whether it's lemon pepper, Louisiana rub, or atomic, finding your flavor combo is easy, but deciding who you're going to split it with, that's a different story. The Boneless Flavor Fix. Just $20 for a limited time at Wingstop. The wing experts. Prices and participation may vary. See local restaurant for details.